Hi and welcome to a new episode of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Semple.
And we're still free. Well,
not as in roaming free, no.
Well, no, I mean, it's you can listen to this and you have not paid. And if you did pay, you didn't pay us. But the news today is that Joe Rogan is moving to Spotify.
And I'm still recovering from Russell Brand having moved to Luminary. I still miss Russell Brand's podcast, but I am not going to encourage them to move to these platforms.
And you also like Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah, I'm not following it. It's such a shame because, bloody media. The whole point of podcasting was it was a connection between individuals and people wanted to listen to them. And why do you need some intermediary that then starts charging extra money? And I don't want a stable of celebrities from Luminary. I just want to listen to Russell Brand.
Well, they have lost one listener.
Yeah, like they care. I have the millions.
I wonder how Russell Brand is doing on Luminary. I mean, I'm sure that he's got paid, but in terms of...
Yeah, I want him to beg to come back.
In terms of traffic, I don't know. I mean, I understand why they're trying to close these deals. It makes sense for Spotify to attract people. It would make sense if they would keep it free. I mean,
yeah.
If it was a solution where I could still listen to it, and it's a way for me to find out more about Spotify, or maybe put some ads in or something.
But even with the maybe I'm being contradictory, but I would pay Joe Rogan or Russell Brand directly. I mean, if they set up a Patreon site, I would subscribe. I would pay for it. I pay for the Thursday night virtual pub quiz, because I value it and I want it to continue. I just don't want it to be stuck behind some media company. That's my bigger issue, not the money necessarily.
I mean, I understand the strategy for a media company to try to attract these stars to get more customers. And, it does make sense. It is probably good for podcasting because... at least in the case of Spotify, there is a huge amount of people that have Spotify accounts and probably are not using podcasts, and they might find out about podcasts because Joe Rogan is available. Something that I actually find quite interesting is that if I look at statistics of who is listening to our own podcast, it's all over the place. I mean, there's quite a few probably more sophisticated people that use, the Apple application, but then there's plenty of people that just click play on the web page.
Interesting. I've often wondered that when we share the links. Yeah.
So when there is some people that use podcasting tools, there are other people who don't.
Yeah.
In the same way, like I have started blogging again for the last couple of months, but I realized that the number of people using aggregator is tiny. So how do people find out about my blog posts? Mostly because I post on social media websites.
It's funny, the whole business of subscription or just repeated access to things and trying to get an audience. I don't think either of us are terribly worried about getting an audience, but just encouraging people to listen and making it easy is still not straightforward, is it? And I was going through another phase of being slightly disgruntled with posting onto Facebook or Twitter, and I don't care too much, but being slightly aware of or bothered about what reactions were, instead of going through another phase of thinking, I can't be bothered with this, I'll just, come out of the social media platforms, post to my blog, and if they're interested enough to keep reading me, then that's fine, and I still might do that, because I think I have this sort of very, having worked in the media most of my working life, I still have this very ambivalent relationship with professional media, and anything that sort of smacks of, growing an audience or whatever just makes me nervous. And even down to my daughter recommended a podcast, How to Fail, by the author of the book of the same name, with a guy called Mo Gaudat, who used to be head of Google X. and an interesting guy, and talking about sort of stuff that we talk about here. But with this journalist lady who's presenting it, who just was trying to sound like a professional broadcaster, interviewing him, and sort of just kept getting in the way of it. So I guess what I'm coming around to saying is, I like kind of like authentic, amateurish, not terribly professional, like us, content. Anything that starts trying to be something else, I'm just, not a fan.
No, I get it, but on the other hand, I mean, I'm not trying to build an audience, but I know that there is some people that care enough to, read what I write, but they only get there because they find the post on Facebook or on Twitter. Otherwise, they wouldn't. So I can say, well, I don't care about posting this on Facebook, but it would mean that these people would just not, they will not start using aggregator. They will never, and there are no other means. I know that some bloggers have started just offering subscriptions, free email subscriptions, so that you can just, get an email whenever a post is created.
Well, I've had on my blog, you can subscribe via email as well as RSS, and there's a fair number of people do that, actually.
Yeah, so you could do that, but say, really? Email?
Well, but you see, a lot of people, a lot of their time is still spent in email. That's where they spend a percentage of their days, I guess.
Oh, yes. To be honest, I one of the companies I work with is specializing in sending daily briefing via email, and it is quite good and successful business, and people do appreciate reading the news in their mailbox every morning. They have an app, they have other a website, but mostly you push information through email. So I don't know, maybe I'll figure out how to turn on the feature on my own website.
Well, it's such a fine line though, isn't it? Even just using pushing information, it's like my wife Penny's working for a company that are trying to improve their social media output, and it's such a slippery slope. We were talking about this the other night. We're living near where the HS2 is going to pass by, and we get letters from HS2, community letters kind of thing, and the most recent one was about newts and reptiles and an 8-week long period of work moving them, right? And I found myself thinking, well, I'm very pleased that you're making the effort to move them, but I'd just rather you weren't taking up the bloody countryside in the first place. And it was just this funny, folksy, friendly paper letter that came through the door in a situation where most of us really hate the fact that the thing's coming anywhere near us, And I find that whole awkwardness of organisations trying to talk to you like your friend, it's disturbing.
I agree that the big difference here is not the channel, is the voice, is the fact, and there are some companies that are actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There is a company here in London called Spoke that they sell trousers. And their email, and they spam me all the time. And actually, I read their messages because they are so they're clever. They, with a little bit of hint of irony, they clearly understand who their customers are. And once a week, I'm saying, oh, maybe I'm gonna buy another pair of trousers, and I don't need them, but it's like, it's so you can have pretty effective.
Well, and there's a local authority. I think we might have spoken about this before. Our Buckinghamshire chief exec sends out weekly emails, and they're really, really good. They're really informative, they're well written, they're not trying to be sort of down with the kids or cheesy, they're just straightforward. But I don't know. I think if you're providing information that people want, then you get away.
For example, I love the Twitter account or maybe Facebook account for the local Ealing police.
Mm-hmm.
There was a post some time ago doing some other activity. They found some packets of drugs and they posted a picture, and they basically said, if this is yours, please let us know. We'll come to pick you up if you need to. And it was like...
I love stuff like that. Yeah.
It was funny because you would not expect this tone of voice to come from, the police force. And it was actually nice. It was very clearly there is some guy on the other side writing stuff, and he has a sense of humor.
They needed a sense of humour in Wales. I saw a story about a guy who was arrested by 3 armed police, with the whole gear, the machine guns, the body armour, the lot, walking around this lake in Wales because he was carrying a sword and dressed up in a cloak. And turns out he was a Dungeons and Dragons nut and was testing out how heavy the gear was. And somebody had reported this guy running around the lake carrying a sword.
That must have been an interesting encounter.
I think both sides thankfully had a sense of humour about it.
I think this kind of leads us in it's speaking of people going and walking around lakes.
Moving and getting out, yeah.
Did you hear the appeal in, I think, some area in the Lake District telling people, don't come here? Yes, this is touristic destination. Do not come here.
Yep.
Yes, you're legally allowed to come here, but please don't. I mean, tourism, the whole industry must be in a pretty tight spot.
Oh, well, I was talking to a friend who's she used to be in the United Nations in the Maldives. Actually, I think she might be going back, but an economy almost 100% dependent on tourism, and they're just in a mess. And as the UN trying to support recovery, what money would you put on which industry to be the one to send them towards? What's going to thrive after all of this? And we were talking before we started the podcast about travel, and I find it's interesting that the Facebook feed comes up and reminds me that it's a year ago today that I was flying across the interior of Australia, and I've been lucky to see so many parts of the world, some of them many, many times, and I'm finding myself really conflicted about it because, I enjoy looking up at the sky and having clear sky instead of contrails, and I get kind of grumpy when a flight goes over and I look it up on flight 24 to see, what the bastards are doing breaking the rules. But that would be very disingenuous of me just to immediately get back on planes and start flying around the world again. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, I mean, speaking of as somebody who sort of based his life on the fact that it is easy to fly between the UK and Italy. So for, still having half of a family in Italy and my job here, I did book a flight home on the 2nd of July. I'm literally on the first flight out of here. Still not sure if that is going to happen. I'm still figuring out, probably I'll buy a full hazmat suit to travel.
Don't forget to take pictures.
Absolutely. But, and then I'll post them on the podcast.
Of course.
But, I mean, the idea of not being able to do that is, I'm not sure I would. I don't know. That would mean making some important life decisions if easy, flight across Europe were not available anymore.
Yep.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and honestly, I think that it will probably go back to what it was. Maybe there is going to be a little bit less business travel because we have probably proven that it
also
works.
the businesses have to recover in the first place as well. But
yeah, there will be less business travel because there will be less businesses.
Yeah.
But in terms of traveling and going places and seeing the world, I think it's a good thing. Every plane load of weird British tourists that lands in Trieste and vice versa, of weird Italian tourists that land in London, it's a good thing. It's people meeting other people and learning about other experiences, and you can't do that remotely. You can't do that by reading books. So
I know. Yes, I agree totally. Nor by just connecting virtually or whatever. I think there's that thing of experiencing other cultures that you have to be there, really. Yeah.
And there are environmental aspects related to this. So I'm fine with it being, maybe a little bit more expensive and being something that,
More of
I'm
a special
fine.
thing.
Yeah, I'm fine with a situation where, you need to be mindful because, you spend £200-300 and not 50. But I wouldn't want that to become impossible or, only for the quote unquote super rich. Because I think we would all be, I think that the world would be a worse place for that.
So interesting, though, because I'm working with some friends on a offering for chief execs around combining all the different things that are happening into something that could be quite different. And it includes all the things about ways of working and expectations of working from home or needing an office or multinational stuff as well. But even just things like the commute in and out to London. I know a lot of people who are thinking really seriously about, do I really want to sit on that tube for an hour packed with other people, to sit in an office packed with other people? And not just that, but I noticed stuff recently, some really good and interesting work that London, the GLA is doing around making more of the city more easily navigable by cycling or foot. And, even more than it is now. And, all of it would be such a shame if we just rushed back into rushing everywhere and causing the same damage.
Oh, I agree. It's I find it's interesting because there is a lot of people in my bubble that are saying the same thing. Honestly, we're fine, right? It's I think I wrote a post earlier today saying that it's the situation for introverts who can cook.
Yeah, so, yeah.
We are fine, right? It's not like we need to meet other people in person.
Yeah, we've got no friends anyway, so yeah.
On the other hand, I can see how there is benefit. There was a very good comment from a friend in this blog post saying, how when you meet other people in person, you can be silent. And for the first time I realized, yeah, that's actually true. If we meet and go for a walk, we're not talking all the time. There are times where you're just walking, right? You don't need to talk all the time. And we're not used to that anymore because because if you're on a Zoom call, it's going to be weird if you just sit there silently.
It's that horrible thought that we got back into offices and everybody would be talking all the time at really high volume.
Well, yes, but on the other point, only one at a time.
Have you seen that fantastic video of what offices would be like if they operated like conference calls?
Yeah, but it's so I don't know. I do think that there are going to be benefits that it will be stick with. But on the other hand, hopefully we can make the best out of this and, get the good bit and lose the bad bit. But most definitely, I think that, as we already said, if nothing else for real estate purposes, companies will just start losing offices. Don't need them.
Well, but it's interesting because, as part of these conversations with this other group of people, connecting with property brokers and agents for commercial property in London, and one of them was reporting one of the property owners saying, well, with social distancing that means everybody will have to be 2 meters apart, that means they'll need more space, so we'll make more money.
Yeah,
thinking,
but
no, that's not really how it's going to work.
This situation is not going to continue indefinitely. I don't think that there will be significant real estate investment based on the fact that everybody needs to be 2 meters apart from everyone else. Yes, it will continue for months, maybe a year, but eventually, I think that it's already, if you walk around town, it's already basically sliding. You can see people being much closer. There is, more people wearing masks. There is caution, but I think that we are just too tired of the whole exceptionality of the situation. So we're kind of going back to not normal in the sense that to what it was before, but we're going to back to something which is much more similar, much more that we don't feel as an extraordinary situation.
Until wave 2 hits.
Yeah, maybe. But, at this point, they will be fine-tuning the situation. So it will be, close it a little bit, release it a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. They're learning a lot. I mean, there's grounds for criticism in some of the way they've handled it so far, but certainly there's an awful lot of smart people working out what's happening and why, and we'll be better able to deal with it the next time round. And I think that's, again, one of the things going forward. We've talked about this before, we shouldn't go around it again, but just the whole difference in how you perceive management and how you achieve things in a world that's less predictable or less stable. And this particular challenge will no doubt diminish eventually, although there are some very bleak propositions that may never go away at all, but there'll be something else.
I think that there is management in general is facing an incredible change, and I think that actually people working remotely is a very important aspect of this, because if you want to be efficient, you need to be able to start creating a situation where there can be asynchronous work. In order for that to work, you need to build trust, and you need to have much more sophisticated ways of communicating than real-time conversations. So you basically need to be able to live with way less meetings. And I think that companies that figure this out will be more successful. Organizations that figure this out will be way more successful than other organizations, because other organizations that just try to do the same work but in Zoom calls, it's just less efficient. They will lose efficiency. Companies that actually use this, and I'm been thinking about this a lot, because we work with a number of startups that use fractional resources. So they don't have full-time people. They might have one or two full-time employees, but then you have, consultants and experts that actually work only for a fraction of the time. So if they don't crack the nut of being able to be asynchronous, they really struggle, because if you only have 1 day a week of somebody and you use 2 hours of the time to have a meeting, you're just wasting time.
But virtual or not, it
doesn't matter.
No, exactly.
But I think that the fact that it's virtual, and the fact that we're moving some of this communication more and more to Slack, to other channels, probably partially also because we're just mentally tired of all these video calls.
Oh, it's hard work. It's draining. Yeah.
It might create opportunities for people to learn. And I read this in an article that I think was originally written by Matt Mullenweg from WordPress, where he's describing different, I think, 5 levels of an organization working remotely. And there is a note that really struck my attention that basically says, when you go asynchronous, you need to hire good writers.
I was just going to say, so I'm so glad you said that, because I was waiting to say that the thing that gets me excited about this is it will make more people think harder about how they write and what they write. And that was always the magic of blogging, and doing it over years makes you think harder about what you're trying to say, and learning how to say it as concisely as possible and with as much clarity as you can achieve, so people don't run off and think the wrong thing. And I would love it if more business was conducted in quality conversational writing. It's what got me excited about the whole lot in the first place. And that I think is something that, I would certainly love to be sort of teaching or coaching execs on. How do you say what you mean in plain language, in a way that other people can understand it?
I think that the real challenge is how do you optimize other people's time? And this is probably something that managers, at least in some type of organization, are not really used to. So the thing is, you cannot send to somebody a link to a 1 hour long video saying, "Oh, this is very interesting," and saying, "I'm not spending 1 hour to watch this. Tell me what is interesting here."
Yeah.
The fact that the burden of being understood and of passing, being able to pass on a piece of information is on you, is not on the recipient. You need to do everything you can to be understood in the shortest amount of time with the least possible resource.
And that thing of just passing on resources, I've been reading about a note-taking philosophy, I guess, called Zettelkasten. It was a German professor, and it means card index cupboard sort of thing, And it's the principle of taking lots of notes a lot of the time and connecting them to each other. And in his day, it was just putting date stamps on the cards and then relating that to another card that had the same date stamp. So I've been faffing about with text tools trying to get it to do that. In fact, Drafts has just come up with the ability to do wiki links from one note to another, so I'm a very happy bunny. But the point of all that was, rather than just snipping quotes out of documents, or, as you were saying, just sending somebody the link to the document, the principle of Zettelkasten is also to write down what you have taken from that bit of information, what it means. And in the process of assimilating it sufficiently to write it on that note, you have learned so much more than just copying and pasting the quote from the article or the book. And I think the same thing is true of communication in business. Don't just pass noise around. Try and write some signal.
And that is the challenging part. I mean, that is because I guess the problem is that writing is not a skill that is necessary to become a manager, or that was necessary to become a manager or a leader in general.
Or they deferred it to somebody else. They got somebody else to write it for them. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but they in that case, you need to have somebody else coming with you all the time, following everything you do and storytelling. So in any case, escalating the importance of this, remember we used to call the narrative of work, is, I think, becoming prominent and important again, if you want. I don't think I don't think it ever went away. It just that probably it wasn't interesting enough for me for many, many years. And now that I'm here and I'm seeing this, I said, well, maybe we can have another go at this and try to make it better. I'm actually trying to adopt a very simple. I'm going to try with one of our portfolio company to just use Slack as a blogging tool. I'm going to set up a Slack channel where I will only accept blog post style content. Right. And I'm just going to erase anything that doesn't match the style. I'm going to curate it. And the what I'm trying to figure out now is how do I show them what, because I have very clear in mind what a blog post is, the length, the rhythm, how it should sound, how it should look like, but it's very hard to transfer, to teach this to other people.
Yes.
Because you end up either having people writing essays that are completely useless and boring, or maybe people not writing anything because they're not comfortable with it. Yeah. So it's tricky, and I think that probably they should take writing classes.
Yeah, well, I even having done this, my degree was in English. I love reading and writing. I've written a blog for nearly 20 years, and I have just bought 2 more books on grammar and syntax and good writing, because I just love. I'll remember about 1/10 of each of the books that I read, but I just still love squeezing as much value out of, the 140, whatever it is nowadays, characters on Twitter, or the 3 or 4 paragraph long blog post. And so much writing. In fact, I've got a topic for a blog post that's sort of gestating at the moment called Squandered Words. And just how many words are squandered. If you imagine we had a finite limit in our lives of how many words we could use. And in the written communication in most businesses, just how many of them are pissed up the wall at the moment. It's a tragedy.
I'll try to see if there is any budget I can squeeze out of it to hire a blog teacher.
Well, there you go.
You should find a nice title.
The Blog Master.
No, but it's
That was a joke.
No shit, really.
But see, that's the thing, because it then turns into, there's so many, social media experts who will tell you how to write killer content.
But they have no idea. I mean,
I know.
The problem is that every time I hear create content, I just get annoyed about.
An angel dies somewhere. I know.
Yeah.
But that sort of relates. that goes back to the grumpiness about HS2, about Joe Rogan and Russell Brand, or about chief execs who get somebody else to write their weekly blog post. It's about communicating with people and having a respect for the people you're trying to communicate with, and a genuine desire to genuinely help them or make their lives better. Is rare, because a lot of people just get paid for filling the internet with noise.
I think that the key word here is that you write to help others. I mean, you write because you want to empower other people.
Exactly.
And not because of your ego, not because you want to sell them something, not because you want to convince anybody of anything. And that is a tricky proposition, because I think it doesn't come natural very often in many organizations.
No, but partly because we're self-conscious. So a friend I was talking to was saying she was very nervous about public speaking, and, I was trying to dig into why, and it was all about being found out or found wanting or not being good enough or looking stupid or being laughed at. And that's still the prevailing feeling as people expose themselves by opening up and offering their thoughts out into a public space, whether by speaking or by writing. And again, it's partly made worse by the sort of pack mentality that's unfortunately developed in a lot of social media, where people will jump on and vilify, ridicule people for looking stupid. But I think, there's so much scope for us to help each other to get better at writing and helping. And a lot of that will take place in the context of work.
Now, there is a lot that can be done in this space, and there is a lot that still needs to be done. I think it is interesting that this situation is, at least in my mind, is reopening a whole number of opportunities and ideas that, I don't know, I kind of feel like I want to help people solve this again. I'm not saying I can, but I'm saying
no. But we know
I'm
more
willing
than
to try. Something that honestly I had given up on this quite a while ago.
I know. Well, Dave Weiner and me both enjoy reading your blogs, Paolo. So
yeah. It's I have 2 readers, and my mom too, I think.
Did I just say reading your blogs? I did, didn't I? Jeez, your blog posts. You only have one blog.
Sorry?
No, it's just I get really grumpy when people said, "Have you seen my blog?" and my new blog, and I think, "Oh, have you set up a new Squarespace instance or something?" And what they mean is my recent blog post. So I said I enjoyed reading your blogs. I didn't mean that. I meant I enjoy reading your blog posts.
Okay, I'll edit this out.
No, leave it in. It's educational, Paolo.
Education.
If it stops one person talking about their blog posts as a blog, there'll be less dead angels.
Actually, I must say that recently there have been at least a couple of instances where I've found people who I would not expected to write blog posts, and when they did, I was like, "Yes!" I
see. You're just like me.
I love you a little bit more because you said blog post and not blog.
It's true. You get that little, "Oh yes."
Yeah, but let's say that at this point, I went from being annoyed when people say blog, which doesn't make any sense because they do that all the time, to just being positive. You see, it's about being positive. Now, every time somebody says blog posts, I love them a little bit more. So it's
I'll try.
Good vibes.
I'll try. I think that's a good note to end on, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great note to end. So thank you very much for listening. It's very important that when you meet any of us, you call them blog posts.
And we'll try to respond appropriately.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.